Siding products are a big debate in the building community, specifically James Hardie versus LP Smartside. There's a couple other products that are good too, which we'll talk about, but this video is going to focus on our siding decision-making process, what led us to eventually choosing James Hardie Smooth Lap in Arctic White, which is this product right behind me, and all the considerations we made in order to make that decision. If you followed our home build, you've probably picked up on that we do a lot of research on virtually every product and building technique that we put into this house before we actually make the decision and buy the product and do that section of the project. Siding has been no different. We spent a lot of time thinking about this, researching all the products out there, reading their installation manuals, reading online reviews, really trying to get as much information as we could to make an educated decision.
And part of that process was also getting samples for the ones that we narrowed down as our top 3. So we did get samples of both the cedar grain and smooth texture for both James Hardie and LP, and we liked the smooth texture for both of them a lot better than the cedar. When we did some of our digging, we found out that the cedar texture is actually the more popular for both brands, which we were a little bit surprised by, this being that we really liked the smooth texture over the cedar.
The cedar texture is kind of a stamped wood grain look to mimic the look of real wood, but I think the smooth texture actually looks more like real typical cedar siding than the stamped version does. But stamped, I guess, hides imperfections a little bit better, and it's a much more popular selection for both James Hardie and LP. Before we get into the details of why we chose Hardie over LP and a couple other products, I want to note that these are all pretty darn good products. There are not really many like horrible siding products sold in 2022, 2023, because we've just learned from a lot of mistakes in the past, and manufacturers make pretty good products now. The key is installation, and so many great products are ruined in faulty installations that don't have good attention to detail, don't follow basic things like treating the butt joints correctly, coating the field cut edges, making sure the clearances above horizontal flashing is adequate. Those basic installation details are what I feel like I've seen cause most of the issues when people complain about one brand or another online.
There's also the side of actually installing the product as well, and those details. And that was definitely one of our top considerations when looking at the products. Being that we thought we might install the products ourselves, we wanted to make sure that we would have the skill sets and the tools to do so.
After we got the samples, we put them up against the house, took a good look at them from up close, from far away, and we really liked the smooth finish on both the Hardie and the LP. However, the LP had an edge because it was so easy to work with. Longer pieces, it's more flexible, so we were definitely interested in that product. The company that the samples came from is actually called Diamond Coat. They're a preferred pre-finisher of LP. They basically buy it in bulk and warehouse it, and then do a couple value-add processes like add a little anti-clapping strip, and then of course paint the outside of it. So we were really close to ordering all that material until they told us one thing, and that was the smooth panels that we were going to order from them were actually going out of continuation or being discontinued from the LP factory. LP was retooling their lineup to redo the texture on the smooth panel. So at the time of when we were ordering in December of 2022, you couldn't actually get LP Smooth anywhere except Diamond Coat because they had warehoused a whole bunch of it ahead of time. I called LP to dig into this a little bit more, and it was true. They had shut down their smooth lines because of a grain popping issue. If you're not familiar, Smartside is an oriented strand wood product, and I guess on their smooth product, they were having some strands popping through the surface of the paint, and it didn't look very good. The cedar texture was unaffected. I guess that little bit of extra surface texture helped any grain pops blend in, but they had to do something about the grain pops in the smooth. So it was kind of an issue that we couldn't get the same siding in the future because this garage apartment is built specifically for an addition. We even thought about buying a whole bunch of smooth up front from Diamond Coat to cover the future addition, but then rethought about that because it's all the old style that had the grain popping issue, so we really didn't want to be stuck with that either. So after hearing this, the scales tipped a little bit back towards James Hardie, but we weren't done researching, and we found another product called Celect by Westlake Royal. It's a PVC plank siding. Looked like a really cool product. The butt joints interlock, and it just looked really durable in the long term. However, I went to go find where I could buy this, and they had also discontinued their smooth lineup. For them, it wasn't a quality issue, but there just wasn't enough demand for the smooth texture. They said everyone wanted the cedar, no one wanted the smooth. so they just stopped making it. So again, we were out of luck and the scales tipped even further towards James Hardie.
We should note that we did install vinyl on this south facing wall, and that's because this is the side that's eventually going to get the addition that Alex mentioned earlier. We wanted something that was easy to install and also easy to remove. So we actually installed this with screws with the intention of removing it in the future. But why didn't we put this on the rest of the house? The main reason that we didn't put the vinyl everywhere else is because of the exposure. We really love the 7-inch exposure, and that's not something that's currently available for vinyl. The vinyl we ended up installing was Ply Gem Transformations 5.5. It's basically two 5-inch exposure pieces connected together on top of each other, and it was actually really easy to install, and we're glad that we did end up putting that on the south side.
So ultimately we decided on the James Hardie Smooth Lap. It's an 8.25 lap siding, 7-inch exposure, pre-finished in their Color Plus Arctic White. I sourced this through Home Depot. They had the lowest price, and actually when I compared the pricing between this and the pre-finished LP, the LP was actually about 5 or 10% more than this was based on square footage, which also, I know there's a lot of really good research and longevity studies on the Smartside, but it was just a little bit of a hard pill to swallow when you hold both of these products side by side. One is essentially a pressed wood product, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the fiber cement feels just a lot more durable, heavier, like you're getting more for your money and you're actually paying less for it than the LP. But with that said, there are definitely cons to James Hardie. This is certainly not a perfect siding material. It's heavy, which makes it difficult to install. It's brittle. You have to be careful when handling this material. Cutting it is certainly more difficult than the Smartside. You can't use just normal woodworking tools. It's special blades. Unless you're using shears that make no dust, you gotta wear a mask. And the pre-finished coating is certainly not invincible. It will scratch or scuff if you come into contact with it with a tool or other hard surface. But there are advantages to the Hardie. Some of the pros are it does have a really solid history of being a very long-lasting siding product, especially when installed over top of an air gap like we did. And being that it is kind of a legacy company that's been around for a long time, we're pretty confident that by the time we go to do this addition in 5 or 10 years, we'll be able to find the same exact product so we can get a perfect match on the addition. So in a nutshell, our siding decision was driven mostly by our own aesthetic preferences with some consideration to performance. If it wasn't for our preference on the smooth texture, we very likely would have bought LP siding, and it certainly isn't out of the question in the future edition if we can get a close enough match. We definitely appreciate the advantages of it over the James Hardie, but for our situation now, the Hardie worked better. Click this link for our full James Hardie install.